Introduce the speaker first, which is Cor van der Welen, and she studied biology and philosophy, and she has a doctorate in philosophy of biology. And her dissertation was on the interaction between genes and the environment in embryonic development, and it addressed the role of metaphors in biology and their contribution to selective attention. So she has written on various aspects of attention since, and it's often focusing on selective lack of attention, such as strategic ignorance surrounding meat consumption. And as a professor at Wageningen, she integrated insights surrounding motivation and attention with processes related to protein transition. And she retired in 2021, or as we say in Dutch, specifically for the academics, met en met raad. And today she will share with us how can attention seeking be good. So thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lianne. I will try to share my screen. And then I will also...
Oh. Ik vind dat een moeilijk moment van de dag.
Is this working? Is this working?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So yes, as Lianne said, how can attention seeking be good? This is a talk that is based on a paper with the same title, which I published a few years ago. And when there was a conference in Würzburg 1.5 years ago, where Galit was also present, who is now also here in the audience, I remember that some people after my brief talk asked, I don't really see how this is about attention. I found that a surprising comment, but I then realized that most of the others that were presenting were phenomenologists and psychologists talking about experiments about paying attention and specific phenomena in attention paying. So it was a bit of an unexpected approach, apparently, and this may also be true for you. So I start with that as a kind of alert that it may be a bit different from earlier presentations who mostly paid attention to paying attention. So the quality of attention, the quality of the attention we give to the world. But in social context, attention is not only about giving attention to other people, but also about receiving attention. It's mostly a kind of a give and receive, a give and seek. And it is this receiving part, the attention seeking or receiving part, that I will focus on today. Let me see. How do I go to the next slide? Next. Okay, so this is the structure of my presentation. I will first talk about receiving attention as a very important basis for social recognition and for self-esteem in social contexts. And I will briefly talk about Harnett and his book, and about Derber and his book here under this heading. Then a bit about the inequalities of attention, of attention giving and attention receiving, and then I will illustrate that with what Adam Smith had to say about that in his theory of moral sentiments. Then, conclusion, I could also have started with that mutuality is always the norm in this giving and seeking game. And yet, it is apparently expected to be a mutuality of giving. So I give attention to you and you give attention to me. Attention seeking is always seen as more problematic. And from there on, you can also see that attention seeking is associated with shame and with psychological disorders and with all kinds of negative things, which has also resulted in a lack of curiosity, at least a lack of sympathetic curiosity about attention seeking. And that brings me then to to talk about strategic ignorance. It's something we tend to avoid to really think about. I wanted to reverse that curiosity, and a little book by Adam Phillips was a great help. The book is called Attention Seeking, and his basic message is that attention seeking is extremely interesting. And then I will end with some experiments with students that I did on attention seeking. Okay. Attention as a basis for self-confidence, self-esteem, and recognition. This book by Axel Honneth, written in 1992 and translated in English by Joel Anderson in 1995, also with a beautiful introduction, bases this view on Hegel, who said that people can only flourish in conditions of mutual recognition. And of course, sympathetic attention is a basis for that. And he distinguishes three forms of recognition. Love in the family leads to self-confidence. Love in equality legal equality in the state leads to a sense of dignity and self-respect, and recognition in social life leads to self-esteem. So this is not very important here. It's mostly Axel Honneth. In Axel Honneth's books, it's important, but his argument is mostly about the importance of this social aspect. And he wants to emphasize that social struggles, often seen as based on predefined interests, often economic interests, are really also struggles in which the struggle for recognition is very a basic motivator. And often, sometimes or often, I'm not sure what he wants to say, more important or at least intertwined with struggles for recognition. So the normative message of his book is that the challenge for societies is to look for an expansion of the possibilities for self-esteem by greater inclusion and by making conditions for self-realization available for everyone, for all groups and for all individuals. Let me see what happens if I try to go to the next slide in a different way. Ah, yes. Here's our next book, and this is directly about attention. It's a book by Charles Derber, written in 1979. The Pursuit of Attention is about the competition for attention. He is a sociologist, and on the basis of micro-sociological studies of dinner conversation, he noted that this norm of mutual attention, asking each other questions, giving support, asking in deeper detail, etc., was giving way to a more competitive way of talking during dinners. And it worried him. It worried him as a sociologist and as a thinker about the trends in our societies, especially in the United States. He's an American. Our competitive and overly individualistic society, capitalist society, makes us increasingly insecure, he said, so that, long story short, we become attention seekers instead of just attention receivers. We have to seek for it. And reciprocity becomes competition. So it looks as if we are all quite self-celebrating persons, but that's really based on a deep self-doubt and a very precarious sense of self-worth that in his eyes is increasing, and that leads to this attention-seeking behavior. The book was reissued in in 2000 with a new introduction. And then his worry had become really a cry of alarm. In his eyes, United States had developed into a celebrity society full of lonely people with great attention hunger. And he gave many examples from Donald Trump, who was then a CEO, who had this television program called The Apprentice. Maybe you have heard of it or you know it, in which he was all around and attracting a lot of attention. But also President Clinton, who made a very theatrical show of his presidency in the eyes of Durbar, and also webcams in dorms where people wanted to be seen day and night and to be acknowledged in their daily lives. Well, that kind of examples from well-known people to ordinary people. What he saw in it was a complete derailment of capitalist society and the breakdown of community. In his eyes, we are increasingly lonely, we have to cope on our own. And the result is also that there is an ever greater inequality of attention. So people and groups who lose out also lose important aspects of their dignity. And many people are desperate in not only for economic reasons, but also for reasons of attention and recognition. So apart from these trends, Durbar also saw a structural aspect in the inequality. He dealt with that in the second half of his book, which was not so focusing on current developments. The structural aspect is that, he says, what you always see is that dominant groups primarily receive attention and subordinate groups primarily give attention. So there are again many examples. Men versus women, doctors versus nurses. Well, the subordinates tend to pay attention and the dominant people tend to receive attention. So for example, between men and women, men are more often what we could say shameless attention seekers, while he doesn't use that word as far as I remember. While women, for many women, was and still is looking for attention is something associated with a lot of shame and insecurity, and well, something that takes a lot of courage to do, and they don't like to do it. Okay, so there are time dependent and time independent aspects in his book. And let me say a little bit more about the time-independent aspects by referring to Adam Smith. His theory of moral sentiments first edition was in 1759. The book is, as the title says, it's about morality, and it is a kind of combination of what we would now call social psychology and virtue ethics. He wrote at a time when normative and psychological aspects of morality were not yet clearly separated. So his observations are often very astute, and we would call that now social psychology. But he sees mutual sympathy as the core of moral life. So we give sympathy to others, but we also need sympathy from others. And we're always looking for a kind of balance in that exchange. And he at several places he emphasizes how extremely important it is to that people look at us and recognize us with sympathetic attention. Somewhere he writes, for example, well, compared to the contempt of other people, all other evils are easily supported. So that's the worst thing that can happen to people, to be completely contempted by other people and to be completely on their own and kind of outlaws. So that belongs to a view of human beings that sees human beings as being social to the core. Human beings like and need other people to live and to have fun and to do all the things that are important. But going to the next bullet point, receiving attention is clearly a strong source of motivation for people. So somewhere he said that the purpose of all the toil and bustle of this world, so all the ambition that we have, is to be observed, to be attended to be taken notice of with sympathy and approbation. So this could hardly be something more important. And this is the reason that he somewhere also says that his views come very close of those of Mandeville, with whom he was in a kind of, well, he was responding to Mandeville's view that this is the only, in fact, the only and most important motivation that we have in social life: to be observed, to be attended to be recognized, to have a good status. Mandeville calls that vanity, and Adam Smith has clearly been taken his views very seriously and says that they border on the truth, but they're not the whole truth, because in his view we also have other. We do not only want to be seen, we also want to see. We also have this tendency to sympathize with others. So we are also givers of attention and of sympathy. And he has this well-known figure, the impartial spectator, a kind of inner capability to be to take some distance and to look at things from various perspectives, that makes us not always as dependent as Mandeville thinks on the views of others. We can also develop our own appreciation of what is worthwhile. So he says, well, instead of the love of praise, the impartial spectator helps us to develop our own view of, to develop our own love of praiseworthiness. We can develop our own view of that. But there's also something unfortunate in our nature, according to him, which is that success and wealth attract more attention than poverty and misery. So this balance very often goes wrong. And it goes wrong in structural ways that precisely coincide, or more or less coincide, with what Derber had to say on that. And Adam Smith also has a lot to say on that. I don't have time to go deeply into it, but he deplores it, and he says it's the great and universal corruption of our moral sentiments, that this unfortunate tendency for us to always we look up, as it were, to the rich and the mighty and want to belong to them, and they look down on us and they don't want to belong to us, and they hardly pay us any attention. These patterns of looking up and not looking down have been also studied in recent times, and have also been found in primates and in present-day anthropological studies, that the mighty and the wealthy receive far more attention than ordinary people. So back to the norm, which is mutuality, even though inequality might be a more, when we look at societies at large, might be a more conspicuous phenomenon. Morality is the norm. And how can we achieve that norm? Well, there's something curious happening here. You could, in principle, receive that balance and that mutuality. You could achieve that by a mixture of attention giving and attention seeking, so that everybody gets what they need and gives what they want. But we tend to think about it in terms of an exchange of attention giving only. Because, and the reason is that attention giving is invariably seen as something good. think back only of Iris Murdoch, who so famously said that the direction of attention should probably outward, away from the self. Attention giving is, you can also see it in this tegeltje, this popular thing that I found somewhere on internet. Instructions for living a life, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. These are things that are all around. It is paying attention to the world, to others, to, well, and be astonished and be in a state of wonder, etc. While attention seeking in our daily lives is very quickly crossing borders, and it always verges on the pathological. Attention seeking has a very bad reputation. It's associated with psychological disorder and with shame. Again, the shameless Trump and the shameful women who do and don't seek for attention. Which takes us to strategic ignorance, which is another phenomenon of attention, not necessarily a social phenomenon. It's about a specific form of avoidance, namely the avoidance of danger and unwelcome responsibilities, and things you rather not know. It can be subconscious. For example, I've studied strategic ignorance about meat, where people say, well, I don't look at those programs on TV about intensive husbandry, because if you want to eat meat, you shouldn't know too much about it. It's something that's on the border actually between conscious and subconscious. Then people do it almost automatically, but then they surprisingly quite easily talk about it. I've done quite some work on meat, on the protein transition, so I've encountered that very often. Strategic ignorance can also be very conscious, and then it becomes denial or willful ignorance. For example, when a CEO or a president says, well, to his subordinates, do whatever you want in terms of illegal activities, but don't tell me, because then I will be responsible. So then people are very willfully ignorant, and that's also a form of strategic ignorance. So it can be about those things, about responsibility and about avoiding danger or other unwelcome things, but it can also be about unwelcome aspects of ourselves. And Michelle Moody Adams, who wrote about it and called it affected ignorance, but with the same meaning, said, well, this is perhaps the most common form of strategic ignorance. Being ignorant, remaining ignorant about aspects of ourselves that we don't like. And Adam Smith here too, already a few centuries ago, said similar things. He said, it is so disagreeable to think ill of ourselves that we often purposely turn away our view from circumstances which might render that judgment unfavorable. So if we think that we have reason to not to be so proud of ourselves, we turn away. We tend to turn away. So that is a kind of strategic ignorance description avant la lettre. Oh, wait. So this bad moral reputation of attention seeking clearly does not stimulate curiosity. On the contrary, it invites strategic ignorance, avoidance, and a kind of denial, which is also compatible with the idea that shame stops thinking. So we need not be surprised, perhaps, that it's not laden with curiosity, this attention seeking, just with a kind of negative judgment. But then I already told you that I was very pleased by this little book by Adam Phillips, called Attention Seeking. He is an English psychoanalyst, often referring also to literary sources. And somehow he was also triggered by this bad reputation of attention seeking. And he wants to, in this book, he really wants to trigger our curiosity. And he says somewhere straightforwardly, attention seeking is the best thing we do, even if we have the worst ways of doing it. So I'll explain that in a minute, but he hardly talks about mutuality as a norm, but he clearly assumes it. So he assumes that we must give each other attention and that we need each other for receiving attention. But he, in his case, the seeking should get rid of its negative associations. He was interviewed shortly after the book came out by the London Review of Books book club or something. You can see that interview on internet, and it's very instructive and interesting. But especially the interviewer, who was a kind of euphoric about the book. She said, "Oh, this book, and especially this sentence, that it's one of the best things we do. It lifted the whole weight of my life from my shoulders." Why did not anybody say that before to me? It has always been such a profound source of shame for me that I'm looking for attention. So she's really in a euphoric state of mind. So that's quite funny also. But and then it is an interesting interview also for other reasons. But what Adam Phillips has to say, that what we do when we seek attention is that actually we don't know precisely what we do, because we don't know precisely what we want attention for, what we are looking for, and we are looking for attention to discover what is really of value to us. So it depends on other people, what they give us back to our signals, to our asking, to our probing. In this game of throwing things out and getting things back and getting other things not back, we are also learning a lot about what is really of value to us. And Phillips too notes that that because it's so shameful, we have no curiosity. Okay, I see that you see here also the interviewer quoted. Do I want to say more about this booklet? Well, not perhaps now, maybe in the discussion. So what I did, I have been giving a course about attention for many years. And I always made my students do a self-experiment. And in the first years I gave this course, this was a changing their attention-giving behavior. So what, and they could choose what they did. They should the self-experiment lasted 1 week, and they should change one aspect of their attention behavior. And many people then chose things such as, well, being less on social media, pay more attention to my family, take more time for going for walks, that kind of things. And then in the last episodes, before I retired, I also added this second self-experiment about attention seeking. So I said, well, you change one thing in your behavior, and for those of you who think you could do with a little bit more attention, well, you try to seek more attention in one way or another. And if you think that, well, you could do with a little bit less, then you find a way of doing a little bit less. And I said to them that if it's too difficult or it's too emotional, then come to me or stop, because it's not meant to be too stressful. All of them did it and loved it. I was surprised really by their great motivation. I was also surprised by the outcome. The people who wanted more attention, they really had to assemble their courage. It took really courage to ask for attention. There were, for example, there were two girls who decided they wanted to have a safe rehearsal club, the two of them, so to have kind of safe space to rehearse, for example, to tell things about their daily lives that they would like to share, but they thought it was not important enough to share. And then they discovered how wonderful it was. And it was also interesting to see. I was really quite amazed to see, because they reported that already in a few days it became easier. And the people who said, we could do with a little bit less. I will listen a little bit more. I will be silent for a while. I will, they did various things for asking questions, also asking more questions than they were used to. They also were very positive about the results, because they felt more relaxed in the situations. They said it was really actually a pleasure to listen to other people and to discover that it was nicer than they were in the habit to do. They all, in different ways, almost all of them reported not only changes in quantity but also in quality of the social situation. So there was quick learning, there was great motivation, and there was also a wish to continue. So many of them said, well, I will certainly continue with this. And what you also notice is that, and that is something that Phillips also notes, that when you become interested in this attention-seeking behavior, you become more generally interested in patterns of attention behavior. And that is what I saw indeed happening before my eyes with these student experiments. So I was really uplifted by the results and my students' experiences. So here are some wider examples to confirm that this is worthwhile. That you could, I think, in many more situations, we could try to turn attention competitions into a kind of joint experiences. And here is also again Phillips, who said that you do not only learn more about yourself, but it's also easily expands into learning about kinds of attention. He himself, for example, became interested in wider forms of attention, less personal and less focused forms of attention. It's also, of course, a wonderful way to learn more about shame. And I think it could be, but I wonder what you think. It could be, something in this direction could be a way to deal with what The Guardian in 2018 called the defining need of our time, namely to receive attention. And they also thought that when you talk more freely about attention seeking, maybe then something will start to change. Yes, I think that's about it. In the last session slide, my conclusion: experimenting with attention seeking is what may make it good. That is my brief conclusion. And this is the chapter where it was published. I think I should. It's only in the book that I mention here, mediation and access. But I think I should. It's about time that I put it on the website of Wageningen University, so that it's more easily available. And here is the interview with Adam Phillips. This link that I can recommend, and I always recommend The Theory of Moral Sentiments by Adam Smith. So another picture of that great book. That's it. Thank you for listening, and I will stop sharing. So there we are again.
Yeah, thank you so much for the amazing talk. Just want to open the discussion now.